Are you set, Barry?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, he's ready. We're ready. It's the Podcast Engineering Show. This is session number 11, actually. My band's here again. Yeah! We were just talking about playing Dave, right?
That's it.
Yes! Welcome to the show, the Podcast Engineering Show. I am Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for Dun & Bradstreet and the Forbes podcasts. And I'll select business authors and companies. And each week on this show, we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. Pretty much, we get down and dirty. We talk shop with podcast producers, engineers, and other specialists. And we have a doozy today, as he liked to say. I have a background in audio engineering, and here's the deal. When I entered podcasting about 4 years ago, I noticed a huge lack of audio engineering skills. And it shows itself in many, many different ways, and we talk about it on the show. But that's where this show can help, because we really get into the audio and the technical part of podcasting. And what's great is you learn as you go and as you listen every week to this show. And that rhymed, Dave Jackson, and I haven't listened to Michael Jackson in a while. Anyway, I tried to rhyme again. That was absolutely horrific. Barry, did you like that one? See, and now the
Barry's speechless. Wow.
He's speechless. He's
Barry,
even
man.
Barry.
Barry, you want to come work for my show now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was waiting for the no. Well, you crazy? Isn't that one of the ones?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Barry, did you like my joke?
No way. You crazy?
Oh God. So, and just to clear up everything, Barry, what are you gonna need? What is someone gonna need to start a podcast show and be really successful?
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
All right, we're getting off track already.
Excellent.
I'm going to introduce my guest in a second, but this show is brought to you by two of my ventures. One is Podcast Engineering School. And I want to clarify something. The Podcast Engineering School, when I started it, started the idea of it a few months ago, probably 3-4 months ago, I thought I was going to teach a little bit of everything. Just literally this week, I decided that I'm only going to focus on training and educating individuals and preparing them to have a career as a podcast engineer or producer, whether they start their own business or whether they get a job with some of these bigger companies that are hiring podcast engineers now. So really, I'm not going to get into, how to start your podcast and how to register with iTunes and all that. There's other people who do plenty of that, like Dave Jackson. We'll talk to him in a second. And of course, Fractal Recording. That's my production company. We produce the highest quality podcasts for companies, authors, and podcast networks. FractalRecording.com. Dave Jackson is with us today. This is I'm so happy you're here, Dave, because as I cough and mute myself and write down a timestamp, Dave, I'm really happy you're on episode 11. I thought I was going to have to wait until episode 100. There's a lot of people you approach and you're like, will you be a guest on my podcast show? And they're like, nah, come back to me after you've done 20 episodes. It's like, I even though I understand that philosophy of making sure a show gets going and doesn't pod fade too quick, it's still kind of like, dude, be on my show. Anyway, Dave Jackson's here. He's a podcast consultant and coach. He's been podcasting since April of 2005. That's right. Try scrolling back on your digital calendar that far. It's a little difficult. In November of 2005, he launched the School of Podcasting, and that is his company and website where he teaches people everything about podcasting. And that's also the name of your actual podcast as well, right, Dave?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. We don't want to get into too much stuff, but I changed the name on episode 500 because I used to call it the Morning Announcements because it was cute. Get it, the School of Podcasting Morning Announcements. And everybody just called it the School of Podcasting. And I went, okay, good. We're going to call it the School of Podcasting.
Yeah, all right. I get the hint after 500 episodes.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. So you know how we start this show. We're going to do the speed round, and it's very simple. There's 2 questions. Number 1 is I want to know, Dave, about the shows you produce and engineer yourself. Meaning... Okay. What is it just the School of Podcasting that you produce by yourself? Yeah, go ahead. Lay it on me, my friend.
It's an addiction. It's a bad one. I do the School of Podcasting. That's a weekly show. I do Ask the Podcast Coach, which is a live call-in show that I do every Saturday morning at 10:30. I do the Logical Weight Loss Podcast, which in theory it was starting off to be my weight loss journey, which it's funny because you listen to me lose weight and gain weight and lose weight and gain weight on that show. Yeah, I had people that said, I really like this show because Dave's just like me. He can't lose weight either. And I'm like, that's not really what the show is supposed to be. But my failure inspired people to lose weight, which was interesting. My other one that I do on a regular basis is Weekly Web Tools, which is kind of a WordPress. If you're a person that's doing your own website, it's kind of that thing. And then I have a bunch of other ones that I occasionally do. Like I have one called Building a Better Dave, which basically is just me talking about whatever the heck I want to. I do one called the Clamor Cast, which is Clamor's this app that lets you share audio. And they give me a list of like the top 20 things that people have clamored about. And I turn that into a podcast. And then I have one called Feeding My Faith, which is more of a spiritual thing. And then last but not least, it's still around. I haven't had an episode out since November, which in theory means I should probably kill it. Is called the Marketing Musician Podcast. And the reason I can't kill that one is because that's my baby. It's my very first podcast. So like those last four, I kind of do on a whenever I can get to it basis, which means almost never.
Right. Yeah, you're a busy guy. In fact, you were at Podfest back in February, and we met up there.
Yeah.
We had met before through Kathy Kelly. Thank you, Kathy Kelly. Shout out to Kathy.
Specialmouse.com.
Specialmouse.com, the Special Mouse Podcast. All right, cool. So, and the website, basically School of Podcasting leads to everything, doesn't it?
Pretty much. Or if you go to powerofpodcasting.com, that has pretty much all of my shows on there too.
Okay, powerofpodcasting.com?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let me write that down.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
as a listener of the show, can I just say congratulations on the Forbes thing, man? When you announced that, I was in my car and I'm like, heck yeah, cool, dude, awesome, woo!
Thank you.
That was very cool when I heard that. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. It actually just launched. Well, by the time this comes out, it'll be launched about it'll be a month and a half into it, but it just launched 6 days ago, and I'm kind of doing a lot of work and rounding up these hosts, and it's very cool though. I'm really happy. So that was number one, your shows, and powerofpodcasting.com is where people can find out everything. So let's go through your workflow and your hardware. Now, take me from, okay, you're about to do a podcast. I mean, I don't want to hear about the content prep. You're ready to go. You enter your studio. Tell me what you do and how you do it, and then all the way up until basically publishing. Just an overview.
Okay, well, first things first, I have to shut the windows because I live near a lake that has a lot of geese.
Oh.
And they're very, very noisy.
Wow.
And so that's step number one. And my gear, do we want gear or what do we, or flow?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, well, because isn't that question number 3, I think, is my
Actually,
gear?
the speed round is only 2 questions now. Workflow and hardware are combined in number 2.
Awesome. Okay, so I use an RE320, the Electro Voice RE320 that goes into, now I used to have a DBX 286 S, which I still have sitting here, but I just recently bought my dream piece of equipment because it was, somebody sold it to me half off. And I will say this up front, when you're starting a podcast, you do not need this piece of equipment. It's awesome. It's an Aphex 230. I don't think they make this model anymore. Now I think it's called the Master Channel or something of that nature. Oh. It's $1,000 when it's brand new. And I got it half off from a friend of mine, and I love it, but it basically makes you sound awesome. That goes into a Behringer X1832 mixer, which I normally wouldn't need that. I mean, this thing has like a ton of channels on it, but when I'm doing the live show on Saturday, I'm playing music live. I'm doing a mix minus with my co-host over Blab. I've got me and a bunch of other things. We used to have a call-in line, so we had people calling in. So I had all sorts of things. I needed like 12 arms to do that show.
Right.
To do that. And then I go out of that mixer into a Zoom H5. And then later, once that's done, and usually I just record my segments and then I put everything else in post because I'm a control freak like that. And I just use Adobe Audition for that.
Okay, Adobe Audition. All right, so we're going to go through this one by one, but
okay.
But I do want to mention that you've been a musician forever, and and guitar player. And so did your guitar playing and recording, is that what sort of got you hooked on audio? Was that like the gateway drug to podcasting?
A little bit. Because I was always the guy in the band that was running the sound. I ran the sound system at my church, and so I already had like a Shure SM58 sitting around when I got into podcasting. And I had before it was podcasting, I was just putting audio on a website. Basically, I had a newsletter for musicians, and it just was one of those things that as soon as it went from being words on a page to audio, it just had a deeper connection with the audience.
Right. And
that's really what kind of sucked me in, is when I started getting feedback from people, where before I just didn't get that much feedback. So yeah, I started off, I had a 58 lying around and an old mixer, so I kind of parted some stuff together, down in the basement next to the water heater.
Right.
And went out of the RCA jack into the line into the computer, and there you go. We were recording and off to the races.
Oh, okay. That was 2005 when you started the podcast.
Yeah.
Or probably even earlier.
Yeah.
When you were
that was 2005, literally in the basement next to the water heater. You'd have to tell people, don't flush the toilet. And then,
we need pictures, Dave. We need proof here. We want to see that. All right, so let's get into this. So your microphone is an EV RE320, and of course the RE20 is the famous one and all this. And Mark Johansson at Podfest was telling us that after 1999, they changed the way they make RE20s, so he was telling me to get a vintage one, which I still want to do. But the 320, he had there as well at Podfest, and I got to hear that as well. I really like the sound of your mic, and see, here's my problem. I want to try like 5 different mics, but I'm not going to buy 5 different vocal mics when I only need one.
Yeah, exactly. The thing I like about it versus some of the other mics is that proximity effect, which is usually the closer you get this super warm kind of sound. It gets a little bassier, things of that nature. And this doesn't have that as much. And so when you run it through with some mild compression, you can kind of, if you're looking at different screens and you're going through notes and things like that, you don't have to really worry as much about being right on top of the microphone. And you don't get that kind of boominess that you do on like a Hi-O or a 58 or things, any typical microphone. It's not that they've eliminated it, it's just not quite as obvious as some of the other microphones. That's one of the biggest things I like about it.
Right, I think that's the similar thing with my mic that I have now, the Shure SM7B. It also doesn't have much of a proximity effect, which can be handy.
Yeah.
It's actually
absolutely.
People who want to work the mic, if you're really disciplined and you always stay like, let's say 6 inches away from the mic, but then there's times like you really want to get close, then it can come in handy. But for podcasters, it can be annoying, because if you're moving back and forth a little and the sound changes so much, and especially the way it hits a compressor, because the closer you get, the more bass, the sound level goes way up, because bass carries a lot more level.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the right word.
A little more punch to it. So yeah, you have to be careful. That's half the fun of it, I think, is just mic placement and figuring out where can I talk that sounds good, that I'm not going to have a bunch of plosives and things of that nature. So, and that just takes practice. But I started off with a 58. Like everybody else, I think back then I have an AT2020, which was a condenser microphone. And condenser microphones do sound better. They're a little more high end. The S's and T's are clear. I think I have a 3035 around here somewhere, because we all bought the microphones that we thought they were using in radio studios, which we didn't realize they were really using RE20s.
Right.
And then you realize that as soon as you plug one in, you can pick up the neighbor sneezing, and when this isn't going to work, So I started. That's when I went to a 58, because it's dynamic. It didn't pick up quite as much as the condensers, and then you just kind of compensate with your mixer and turn up the treble a little bit or whatever to get those S's and T's in there.
So you used to plug it into a DBX 286S. Now that's a mic pre and a compressor, right?
Yep, it's a compressor, noise gate. It's got a de-esser on it.
Oh, it does?
And yeah, it's pretty cool. It does a lot the same thing that the Aphex that I have now does. But I think it's like $200. And man, it's some really nice icing on the cake. Again, you don't need it to start, but when you get that tax refund and you're like, I wonder what I could get, and you've got a decent microphone and you're like, what could I do here to just take it up a notch? Yeah, the DBX. And again, I got that from BSW on a scratch and dent sale.
Oh, really?
And love it, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. All right, so you upgraded to the Aphex 230, which I just pulled up on the screen here. Master voice channel.
Yes.
So this has obviously the mic pre, EQ, it has everything. It's like a channel strip.
It is basically a big channel strip. It's got a really cool thing in it where it's got a paramedic EQ where you can come up with a frequency and then say either boost that or cut it, which is a really cool thing. They have a feature called Big Bottom. If I want to get crazy, it just makes you sound like Barry.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then they've got an oral exciter to bring up the top end, and it's one of those things that when I hear one, you know it. You're just like, oh, I bet that guy's he's either got a DBX or I bet that's an Aphex. And you ask and you're like, yeah, I don't tell my wife. Is usually the next sentence when they say they have one of those.
Right.
So
two things I can say about the big bottom and the oral exciter. The big bottom is the low end, the oral exciter is the high end. And this pretty much goes with anything in audio engineering, because I remember way back when we used oral exciters in the studio to sometimes amp up the cymbals on a drum kit or even on guitars, obviously. Not much on vocals, because on vocals in the big studios, you have really awesome gear and the mics and the mic pre's are so awesome. You don't need an oral exciter. But here's the thing. Here's the common mistake, which a lot of people make. They add too much low end.
Yep.
They add too much high end. They think a little is good, so more is better, and that is just not true. And you'll learn from experience if you do it, because you'll put way too much low end and high end in, and you'll go, well, I guess I'm dating myself, but we used to burn things on tape, on CD, or even put it on tape and go in the car and listen to it. Yeah, I guess you could still do that, right? Bluetooth.
Oh,
or
yeah.
something. But you'll hear it, especially in the car, because your car speakers typically are tuned up a lot of low end and more high end, and you'll sound like way far away, just this bassy rumble. It's not good.
Yeah. When all the change in your ashtray is jingling because you're just rattling. When the fillings in your teeth come out, it's maybe just a little too much bass
when your
in the
voice
car.
is competing with an 808 kick drum, you know you added too much big bottom.
Yeah.
So that's anything. That's even just regular EQ, low end and high end.
Yeah.
That's why filters are so cool.
When I got the DBX and first played it, I did exactly what you said. And I had a listener email me. They go, Dave, I know you like the toy. It sounds pretty cool, but whatever you did, you need to undo it, because you're just rattling my jaw here. And so I had to back down on it was the bass, of course, because we all want that big bassy sound. So I had to back that off. But they will let you know. They'll say, I don't know what you did, but you need to undo it.
Yeah. One of my clients, his name's Mike McAllowitz. He's a really awesome business author. And when I was in Jersey, I lived close to him, and we started doing a show together. And then he's like, "Oh, I want to get a setup at my house." So we got some equipment and hooked it up, and with the boom mic stands with the arms attached to the desk, and it was pretty cool. And then I also got him. I think it was a DBX 286S. It was something like that, where it's a mic pre and a compressor, but it had some sort of a low contour knob and a high contour knob, just like the big bottom and the oral exciter. And he starts jacking it up, and I was like, "Hey man, go easy." And then, so it was okay. And then we connected online a month later to do more episodes, and I could tell he had cranked up the low end, and I'm like, dude, you might want to just turn it down. It's so tempting, but.
Well, it's the same thing with the noise gate. You're like, oh, cool, I can cut out the background noise, and then all of a sudden you're talking and half your syllables are getting cut out because you've cranked it up too high. It's like you want to cut out every single breath noise or whatever's going on, and I understand that. Why wouldn't you? But you just get it to where you need it, and that's good. Back it off maybe a little bit.
Well, you can leave the breath or get rid of the breath, but don't go halfway. Halfway through the breath, the gate opens. That's not good.
No.
That's weird. All right, so you got a Behringer 30. Is it a 32 channel mixer?
It is X-Teen. Let's see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got a spot here for 6 XLRs.
Okay.
And then another, according to this, I have 14 channels if I wanted to plug a whole bunch of stuff into this. And it's got built-in effects and a graphic equalizer built into it. The reason I got it is I had to have 2 auxiliary sends, because I had a phone caller and I had a co-host.
Yeah.
And I had to send it to where, otherwise you'd have all sorts of weird echo problems and things like that. So that's the biggest reason I got this, is it was the the least expensive way to have 2 auxiliary sends. And it's a cool little mixer. It takes up it's got a decent footprint to it. And now that I'm not doing that much on Saturday morning, I'm probably going to go back to, one of my little baby Behringers. I think I have a Yamaha around here. I think it's the MG or MC 102, something like that. Little 4-channel mixer, because you just don't need that. And it's kind of weird when you have all these knobs and 80% of them sit here and gather dust.
Right. So you said, do you use that mixer for live gigs as well?
No, I just use it on Saturday. I do a live show. It's recorded live. It's called Ask the Podcast Coach. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
Because I have people. I use a platform called blab.im. We used to do it on Google Hangouts on air, and then we had a phone line that we use. There's a website called callinstudio.com, and for a while we were kicking the tires on Blog Talk Radio, and it was fine, but Blab, just for my audience being a little more technical, I can pull people in and out pretty easy. And so, I have my intro and outro music and all this other stuff, and I have a co-host. So I just had a bunch of things plugged in there for a while. So when I was really doing it, with the call-in and a co-host and everything, and an iPad plugged into it to play all the music, it just I needed more channels, basically. And like I said, I needed the 2 auxiliary sends, and this was the cheapest one I could find that fit that bill.
Totally. Yeah. I was asking because sometimes, so in my studio, I have a mixer as well, and I also have another mixer which I take on the road because I don't want to unplug everything and bring my the mixer that's normally here, bring it out, use it, and then bring it back and have to plug everything in. It's like the mixer that's in the studio stays in the studio, and then I have a little smaller one when I go out on location, which is rare, but I have a separate one for that.
Yeah. And if you don't have the budget for that, a great tip, take a picture of your board, your mixer before you unplug everything. And then tape up the cords. This is the one for this is the one from the iPad. This is that way, because otherwise, when you got to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, it's like, oh, I shouldn't have taken a picture. Or especially if you have children who like to come in and just tweak knobs.
Oof.
It's always good to have a picture to go, wait, what was the set at again?
Wow. Oh, that would be nasty.
Yeah.
You come in the next day, I can't hear anything.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, terrible. All right, so then you come out of your mixer into a Zoom H5.
Yeah. I had I still do have a Roland R-05.
Okay.
And the thing I like about the H5 is you can plug 2 mics directly into it at the bottom of it. Right. So when I take this out to a Podfest, or I'm going to Podcast Movement, things like that, it's cool to do, on the road stuff. I mean, it's got a cool built-in condenser mic into it, but a lot of times I'll, because we're all gearheads, I'll grab a couple microphones and some short mic cables and do, man on the road kind of stuff.
Right.
And I did an interview with a guy in a McDonald's a couple months ago, and we were both sitting there with our 2100s and recording right directly into the H5, and it sounded great.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, so the H5, here's the thing. Here in Colorado Springs, about 2-3 months after I got here, I was talking to these guys at the local radio station, this community radio station that was not even, they were raising money to get their FM tower, right? They were just online. And somebody who was part of that organization knew someone else who said, oh, they're trying to launch a podcast. They just can't finalize it. So I ended up going, his name's Kevin Worley. I ended up going to his house. He has a desk and some boom arms and some mics and a little small mixer, but he just couldn't figure out how to make everything sound good and figure out how to record and all the mix minus stuff and everything. So he asked me to come in and kind of, they had it was almost all done, but they just needed someone to come in and tighten it up and sound check everything and make sure levels are good and get it all set. So then after I leave, they can just run it. He bought his sound guy, whose name is also Kevin. What's up, Kevin Kovacs? He got a Zoom H5, and when we tried to come out of the board into the Zoom H5, the level was so loud, and we cranked down the mic input. You can turn down the level. Mm-hmm. In the Zoom H5, you turn down the level all the way, and it was still distorted. And then I went online and I read, you got to get some, what do they call that? A 20 or 30 dB damper. What do you call them? I forget what you could.
I know what you mean. What's the word?
Yeah, I forget what they call it.
It's a pad, basically.
Yeah, it's a pad. There you go. 20, 30, 40 dB pad. So I got these little, dB pads, 20, it was actually switchable between 20, 30, and 40. We tried them and it wasn't working. And I was like, a lot of people use the H5. How do they do it? And he ended up getting the thing that I have, which is a Sony M10, which is, it's not, I'm not going to say it's a lot better. It's probably about the same, but so what's the deal with the level? Because the XLRs, they want a mic level,
right,
but coming out of the board, it's line level.
And that's, you don't use either. I go RCA out of the board into the line in jack at the top of the H5.
That's a mini, right? That's an 1/8" mini?
Yeah, basically. It's like a headphone jack.
There's a line there. Is there really a line in on top, or is it on the back?
It's at the top up by the microphones. And it's really easy to miss. That was one of the things when I first got it. I'm like, wait, where's the line in? Because you look at it, there's a line out. So if like a direct line out, and there's a headphone out. I'm like, where do I plug in, the line in? And it's there. It's behind a little knob. And so that's how I do that. I thought
we found something on the back that said line in, and we tried that too, and it wasn't working. I don't know.
Yeah, it's there, and that's how I do it, basically.
Right? Yeah, because Daniel J. Lewis, he also has a H5, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so then you record onto that. What resolution do you record at?
Just wave, 16-bit, 44.1. I know you're a 48 guy. I go 44.1. And the only reason for that is I mix in a lot of sound effects and music and things like that. And because everything else is 44.1, I don't feel like sitting there watching Audition convert everything I drag in.
Right, of course.
I'm just like, 44.1 will do.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah, all right. So then you got it on your H5. Then you connect that to your computer, download the files, and you open Adobe Audition.
Yep. Basically, I just grab the card out of it. I will give this tip. When you take the card out of the H5, press stop first. Because if you take out the card while it's still recording, it completely whacks your recording.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, I wish I didn't know that one from firsthand experience. But
wow,
as the old saying goes, haste makes waste.
Man.
Yeah, that stinks.
Wow.
So I'll take the card out, throw it into the, I have just an old Dell computer, and throw that in, fire up Audition. And then what I do is I have my intro and outro music in Audition. I guess what are they, projects?
Right.
And so I basically open it up and drag in my file. And basically what I do is in between segments, I just don't talk for 10 seconds. And I just go in and split that one file up and then drag in some transition music. And most of the stuff that I use every week is already there. So it's just a matter of dragging and dropping things in. And then I export at, depending on my mood, I always export one stereo wave file and I throw that into Dropbox for just archiving in case I ever want to do a best of or whatever. I've got a really good copy of it. Usually it is 64 mono unless I'm doing some sort of gear review where I really want the clarity, and then I'll go 128 stereo.
Interesting. You have a Dropbox. I use Dropbox too. I think I have the 1 terabyte plan.
Yeah.
You have the same thing?
Yeah, it's like $99 a year, I think, or something like that.
I think so, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's good. I do the same thing. The final MP3 and then the final WAV file, both of them I upload as an archive.
Yeah.
Because my issue is when I record multi-track. Typically. Yeah. Things are changing because of Cast, right? Because no one's hardwired to the internet anymore. I'm using this Cast, so even if 3 people connect, they're all coming through one computer, so I record it on my computer on one track. So it's 3 people. But of course with Cast, I can download each of the 3 tracks separately and line them up in my DAW, which is Reaper. I use Reaper.
Nice.
So that's what I do for that. So I'm recording usually only one track at 24-bit 48. I used to do sometimes I'd be recording 5-6 tracks. If it was an hour show, it'd be 5 or 6 gigs, and it's how do I back that up? And I really, for a while I did. I backed up everything, and then I just built up so much. I was like, I can't do it. So now what I do is all the raw tracks are there for a while, but ultimately I'm going to delete all the raw tracks and just keep the final wave and the final MP3.
Yeah, that's me. I'll do that exact same thing. I'll have the finished product. I'll keep the raw stuff just in case, which I've never ever had to go back because
Right.
I've edited out all the bad parts. So why would I? Oh, wait, I want to go back and get that part where he said, I want to put that back into the file. And so I go back and I look and I'm like, wow, how did I get all this? I'm taking up all my hard drive space. And I go in and delete all the stuff that I don't need.
Dave, let's be honest. Someday, some radio station's going to call you and me, and they're going to say, look, we want to air all your stuff, but we need the WAV file. And we're going to be like, yes!
Yeah. And it's like, well, all I have is the mixed down version. No, we need the raw file. Like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Should have. I blew it.
Yeah. So let's talk about editing. What's your philosophy on editing?
Here's the thing. And you will hear this, Chris, when you play this back. I'm a bit of an machine at times, as much as I
really
try not to be. Yeah, I can be, because my brain goes faster than my mouth. So when I'm trying to get my mouth to catch up, I'll say or whatever. I'm in the middle of a sentence and I'll squint and go another place out. So I edit out that stuff. And here's my thought. There are newspaper editors, there are movie editors, book editors, but for some reason podcasters are perfect. And so do you have to do editing? No. But if you've got the time, if you deal with people from radio and they're like, wait a minute, it's not going out live, I can fix my mistakes. I'm in heaven. Right. So yeah, so I do editing. I did a presentation on this at Podcast Movement. I said, if you think about it, there was a mountain and it was okay looking. It was all right. But later somebody went up and did some carving on it, and now it's Mount Rushmore. Right. And that's really all Mount Rushmore is. It's a rock with a little editing, but it's a whole lot more entertaining that way.
Right.
So I always just go in and try to, usually I'm cutting out me. If it's an interview, I'm here to make my guest sound good, but a lot of times while we're just talking, I'm throwing in my little jabs. And, oh yeah, and this one time we did this. Well, you know what? That's enough, Dave. Let's get back to the guest. So I'll cut me out. And anything where when you're doing an interview, a lot of times you're trying to figure out what the next question is. So your guest answers their question, and this is the end of my answer. Well, then there's this weird, awkward pause because you're trying to figure out what the next question is. So they think, oh, he wants me to say more.
Oh.
And they'll keep answering the question, many times repeating what they just said in a different way. I call that the over answer. I will cut that out. Or if I ask somebody a yes, no question and they say, no, never done that. Okay, well, that's no value to my audience, so I'll cut that out. So I am a editing person. I understand you're completely free to say, I just want to hit record, play my music while I'm doing it. When I'm done, it's done and it's out there. By all means, you can do that. But I believe that any podcast can benefit from editing.
How long do you spend on editing?
Well, I cheat. I use Sony SoundForge, not the $600 one, the one that's like $60, because I can actually listen at 1.78 speed and still understand what people are saying. And usually I'm going for the low-hanging fruit. I'm not really doing scalpel kind of, where you're cutting out, I don't know, a word that's run together things. I'm looking for the obvious ums
right.
and
the big spaces.
And the thing where they're going, well, it's kind of like, and then they make their spot. I'm going to cut out 4 of those likes. We just need one.
Yeah, we need one like. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I'm going for the low-hanging fruit. And so if it's an hour-long show, I'm busting through that in about 30 minutes. And it kind of depends. Like you're making timestamps. If we have an edit, I do those as well. I'll kind of mark down. I'll look at the record. All right, somewhere around the 23 mark. Or the biggest thing, if you know you just blew it, don't say a thing for 10 seconds. This will increase or decrease your editing time just huge, because you don't have to search for the mistakes. You open up the WAV file and there it is. You're like, oh, I messed up there and I messed up there. I do a podcast for a company called Crazy Egg, and I basically get paid to read their blog. And the bad news is the person that writes the blog does not write like I talk. So it's actually fairly hard to A, make it sound like I'm not reading the blog, and B, kind of make it sound natural. Right. And so there are times when I just trip over a word or whatever, and I just learned really quick, if you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up, wait 10 seconds and just say it again, and it's so much faster to edit that way.
That's so funny you use Sony SoundForge, because I do too. I actually I have the pro version.
Yeah.
I don't think I paid $600. Maybe it was like $350, but
yeah, it's not cheap, but it's got some cool stuff in it.
Yeah, it came with a bunch of isotope mastering tools, which I that's kind of one of the reasons why I got it. Plus, I've been using SoundForge since the late 90s. I don't know what it is about it, just the feel and the look and the simplicity. And just within the last couple months, I started listening back to some episodes, not all, but when I'm looking for the ums at 1.73 or 1.78, and it really does help. You can kind of skim through and get through it pretty quick. But it's funny, my wife walks in the room and she hears like all these Mickey Mouse voices. It's like, well, she knows what I'm doing. So mastering, how do you process the audio in Adobe Audition? What do you do to it?
Well, this is something I have to be careful with now, because now that I'm using the 230, I've already kind of boosted the bass and treble. So I kind of hate the fact I go into Audition and I usually apply the multi-band
compressor.
Yeah, and I'll throw on the broadcast. Now, it used to be that effect had a wet-dry setting. You could affect how much of that you were adding, and I don't think that's there anymore. It's kind of on or off. And again, so I have to be careful that I'm not, busting out somebody's windows with the big bottom here now. So I do that, and then I go over to the master track, the main mix, whatever that last thing is on the right-hand side, and I'll put a compressor. I think it's the hard limiter -6 is what I will have that do. So, and then I make sure that I look at my levels and make sure that, like, I'm just because it'll limit it to -6 doesn't mean I can just slam it into the wall and
right.
make that thing work super hard. It's there to catch some sort of little, baby spike or whatever. So I make sure I'm not stressing that thing out too much. Same thing with any channel. I'm making sure that I'm not going into the red and that whole 9 yards, and then just go from there.
And do you go by any sound level, like this new Luf standard and all that?
That's one of the things I know it's really easy in Audition, and I've done this on a couple of things where you can do it's on the left-hand side. See, I know where it is and how to do it. I don't know what it's called. But there is a thing, is it volume matching? Oh, I forget. It's a feature in Audition that you can say, listen to this file, make it -16 Lufs.
Right, okay. And see, someone else mentioned that on the show a couple of weeks back, but I'm wondering, that's so interesting. Is that pre or post effect? Like if I have an EQ or a compressor on a channel, I think it's pre.
It's pre. I could be wrong. But in some cases, depending on how the recording was, I do use Auphonic on occasion, and I will run my stuff through that just to get my voice somewhat consistent.
Right.
But most of the time, because especially now I'm going through the Aphex and I'm paying attention to my levels, usually I'm done a pretty good job of recording it to where everything is. I'm not having these massive volume swells and things of that nature. But on occasion, I will run my voice through Auphonic first and then run it into Audition.
Right. Speaking of Auphonic, I've actually been using Auphonic for some of the Forbes podcasts when there'll be one Blue Yeti microphone on a table and 3 people sitting in a conference room talking. And the room noise is a lot. And Auphonic actually does, Auphonic does the best job of anything. I probably couldn't do it by hand any better than Auphonic does it, but it really kind of levels it out and kind of gets rid of, maybe half of the background, the room noise, which is fine. And what else I tried? I just downloaded, did I pay for it too? I did. Auphonic has an actual software you can download to your computer. It's called Auphonic Multitrack.
Yeah.
And what you can do is you throw, let's say there's 3 people speaking and you have 3 mono files. You throw them into this Auphonic Multitrack. It'll do its thing and combine them all together. And I don't know, it's working pretty good. But I wish with Auphonic, and Dave, if you know anybody at Auphonic, I want to get them on the show because I want to ask them about what you were just talking, the concept you were just talking about, the wet and the dry. Sometimes it seems like it overdoes its thing, and I wish I could dial it back a hair so it doesn't seem so processed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I've had things that tool you just talked about is really cool because I've had things where I'll have an interview that I'll get from a client or somebody I'm working with where they'll have they're in the left channel and the guest is hard right channel, and what happens is Auphonic will go through, and when that person isn't talking, maybe they make a noise or whatever, there's something rustling papers. Auphonic will actually boost that sound.
Yeah.
Or you'll end up with this weird kind of echo kind of thing where, and so this is really cool because you throw all the single files in there and it figures out, okay, who's really talking at this point, and it more or less mutes the other 2, 3, 4, however many other files you got going through. So it's really designed for people that are doing interviews. Yeah, I love that. I have that software as well.
Okay. I haven't tried that. If the mono tracks I have are kind of dirty, like there's noise in between the speaking,
yeah,
I haven't tried putting that into Auphonic because I don't think it would work. I actually go through in Reaper and I EQ and compress each track just a little bit and I level it out a little bit. And then I actually render, let's say it's 3 mono, tracks, 3 people talking. I'll render the 3 mono tracks. It's processed and like between them speaking, like if someone doesn't speak for a minute and a half, I'll go in and I'll mute that or I'll cut that out. So I'll go in first, I'll clean up all the between the speaking parts, and then I'll render it in mono files. Then I put that in Auphonic and it comes out clean as a whistle, obviously.
Yep, I've done that, and in some cases, depending how consistent the person is, I'll throw in a noise gate rather than going in and muting it, because that can be tedious when you're going every 10 seconds to mute somebody.
Right.
But the noise gates they're either, the icing on the cake or it's complete poo. One of the two. They both kind of look the same, and you got to be careful with that.
Got to be careful. Some people are crazy. They record 2 tape with their gate. I think Todd Cochran does that. He said he was on the show a few weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, but he says, he has it set. It actually sounds okay. So, but again, your kid comes in, turns a knob, a quarter degree.
Oops. Jimmy, how many times have I told you not to come in here? Yeah.
Do you use any other plugins or effects?
That is basically it. I try to keep things simple. I know Audition does a whole lot more than I use it for, but I basically use it for that broadcast setting and a couple other compressing and things of that nature. But I do a lot of my heavy lifting in Sony SoundForge to cut out the ums and your nose and things of that nature. I do the editing there, and then Audition is that. And really, if it wasn't for the multi-band compressor, I probably wouldn't use it. I used to use Sony Acid Music Studio, which is their multi-track version of that. And I was using that before I used Audition, and a listener of mine had a copy. This is back before you kind of rented the software, and they were going from a PC to a Mac, and they said, I have a legit copy of Audition 3.0 if you want it. And I'm like, well, I can't take that. That's illegal. And they're like, no, I'm throwing away the computer. That you can have the key and everything else. So I had somebody give me Audition, which was really cool. And then, of course, when they switched to their new model, I eventually had to do that. And again, everybody loves this software, so I got to know how to play with it too, so I can teach other people how to use it, because that seems to be one of the de factos. And I'm glad to hear you're giving Reaper some love. That's one I've never really done the deep dive with, but I've heard it's got some really cool tools without being completely overwhelming. Yeah,
I dig it. I mean, it's free to try it, but I actually paid the $60 for the licensing fee because I just wanted to give back.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't tried Audition, and I think I should, because I would like to know, what it is, what it looks like, and how it feels. But, these days I'm a little busy, so.
It's whatever you're doing, there's going to be a learning curve. It's GarageBand, Sony Acid. What a weird name. Who's going to name your product Acid?
Acid Pro, whatever.
Yeah. And then Reaper, they all have, even Hindenburg Journalist, which is another cool program. But that's very minimal. It's meant just to do editing, and it kind of does some weird normalization when you drag in stuff. But all those have a learning curve. That's the fun part.
Totally. I was going to ask you something good, and I forgot what it was.
It was there, and then it just went.
Oh, Blab.
Yes.
Blab. I have not used Blab and recorded through Blab. Tell me about because you can Blab records you, and then you get the file. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so when you download a Blab, well, basically Blab is it's kind of like a Google Hangout. It's a video thing, and it's free right now. It's in beta, which means about every other week when you log into it, something's going to change, which makes things always fun. It is a live. They now just recently came out with a way to do private Blabs, because that was one of the things. If you wanted to do a private interview, you kind of couldn't. Well, now you can. And when it gets done, they send you I believe it's an M4V file, and then they send, I'm trying to talk and find a file here. They send you an MP3 file. I believe it's 128. Okay. I will tell you in 2 seconds. This might be edit point.
While you're finding it, I know they acquired PodClear probably 8 months ago or something. Because I was totally hot on PodClear. They were like kind of like Cast, but maybe even better. Actually better, because PodClear, not only did it do like the local recording with everyone who's connected, like without their knowing they're being locally recorded and uploaded, it just does it. But PodClear also had the video part too, where it would show the video, but it wouldn't record the video. It just would show it so you can feel like you have a visual cue if you need it. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, here's the interesting thing. The MP3 file they give you is mono, 320 kilobits per second at 48 hertz. So that's a pretty heavy-duty MP3 file. So it's not bad sounding. It's now, just like Google Hangouts, if you have any kind of music or something playing, it's going to compress the heck out of it and make it kind of sound but if you're looking for an easy way to record, it's not bad. Right now, they're having a little hang up, because normally what happens is you're done with your blab, you close it, and within, 5 minutes, you have an email, here's your video and your audio. And right now, for whatever reason, they're having a little bit of a hang up where I had to actually email them and say, hey, what happened to the recording? Now, I still record on my Zoom just so I have that. That's my first string, right. And then the blab recording is my backup.
Right.
And so I actually had to email them and go, did something get hung up? I never got the video. I never got the audio. And their tech support's awesome. They're like, oh, so sorry. We're having a bit of a bug. It'll be within like 3 minutes. Here it was. So it's not bad. It's, it's not Wave. It's not, all the bells and whistles, but it's easy. And if you're looking for something with interaction, it's pretty cool that way. Now, doing a live show is a whole nother bag of worms, because I haven't had to do it a lot, but I have had to eject 2 people in about, a couple years time here, where people just come in and, they scream Baba Booey at you or whatever.
Right. Whatever it is.
And I had a guy last week that was just, for whatever reason, was just being kind of nasty and ignorant. And I just went, because he said one thing and I was like, he's right on the fence. And then somebody else came in and he commented on how she looked. And I went, that's not acceptable. And the cool thing is you can eject people, and when you eject them, it reports them to Blab, so they kind of get kicked out of Blab, period. So you can't be a jerk over there, or you'll get into a lot of trouble. So but that's a whole nother skill set, basically.
So how did Daniel J. Lewis feel about you booting him?
No, never.
I was trying to think of someone besides Daniel. I'm sorry, Daniel.
Right. Cliff Ravenscraft, I had to boot him up. What can I say? No.
Wait a second. But let me finish the thought. So with Blab, I think since they acquired PodClear, I'm hoping that someday soon they'll come out with a paid program where they will record everyone locally.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
In high resolution and give you all the separate files and everything. That would be awesome, right?
That would be the best of everything, yeah. Because it's a pretty cool platform.
Right. So I want to come on your show on I'll come on your Blab on one of these Saturdays. I'm going to plan to do that. But you also do the Podcasters Roundtable, don't you?
Yeah, I do that with Ray Ortega and the mentioned Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast, and Ray is from podcasterstudio.com. And we I forget what it was, New Media Expo, something like that. Ray came to me and said, hey, this Google Hangout thing just came out. I want to use it and do a podcast. Would you want to do it with me? And I was like, yeah. So, we use Google Hangout on that. We occasionally will do it on Blab, but we usually have the 3 of us. And with Blab, you can only have 4 people on. And there are times with Hangouts where we'll have 5 or 6 people. So we do that via Google Hangout.
Right. I met Ray Ortega at Podcast Movement last year. And we talked a little, and it was nice. And, he's like, what do you do? How do you do it? And he's like, oh, you got to come on the Podcasters Roundtable, send me a note, whatever. So I got home, and I think I waited too long. I waited like 2-3 months. I mean, I didn't wait. I just, it wasn't top of mind. And then one day I was like, oh, yeah, let me send a note to Ray. So I, went to the website, and there's like where you sort of apply to be on the show. And I applied, and I never heard from him because I know he didn't put I know he didn't put two and two together that was me and that's my application. He probably just thought I was some crazy person trying to get on his show.
Well, I'll see if I can nudge up the list at all. I don't know. It's Ray's show.
Yeah. No, he's good. They're good. I mean, Daniel's good. You're good. Seriously, I feel so grateful to you and so many others in the world of podcasting because when I came in, I didn't know much about podcasting, so I had to learn, and I'm still learning from all you guys. And it's just a really, authentic fraternity as far as I can tell now. I mean, but I mean, everyone seems really cool. Everyone seems pretty open, and even though sometimes we do some of the same things for our business, it's not this nasty competitive cutthroat thing going on.
Now, I always say there's no competition in podcasting because you can listen to me on Monday, you can listen to Chris on Tuesday, listen to Daniel on Wednesday, listen to Ray on Thursday, listen to Cliff on Friday, Mike Bell on Saturday. The list goes on and on and on. And the cool thing about it is, we're all kind of have the same hobby, and so why would you want to cut somebody out who's kind of just like you? And everybody I meet, at least, we all take podcasting really seriously, but none of us take ourselves too seriously. So it's a lot of fun.
Right? It is a lot of fun. So as was this episode, we're pretty much out of time, though, Dave. I want to really thank you for coming on the Podcast Engineering Show.
I have to say one thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's show number 11. This one goes to 11.
Nice, dude. Thank you. I might have to put that in the front. Dude, this one goes to 11. This is awesome. Dave Jackson, podcast consultant and coach. Go to schoolofpodcasting.com and thepowerofpodcasting.com. And Dave, I want to... on one of these Saturdays, I want to check out what you're doing and come on Blab.
Pop on over, buddy.
I've never been on Blab, though.
Oh, it's easy.
It's easy.
It's a little weird because you have to use Google Chrome and there's this little icon in the upper thing you have to click on, but once you get it, it's a piece of cake.
Right. Well, this has been great. Thank you, Dave Jackson, for all your insights and letting us get a peek behind the curtain into your production and workflow. This has been awesome. And as you know, we'll be back next week.
Do we have a new song? No.
No, this is this. Oh, you want a new one, huh?
No, I just was like,
you know what?
I thought you were switching gears.
On this demo that I did for this band, there is a few other songs that are really good. I mean, a lot of them are good. Maybe I will play a different one. So join us next week for another episode. Go to podcastengineeringschool.com for more info or fractalrecording.com. Thanks again to Dave Jackson. And until next week, sound great. See ya.
Walk away from me well, and you can play that part so well. But you're playing out on me now. You like to lose control well. It's quite a feeling, isn't it? Let them know they're written down now. You tell me that still hold